Hi, I'm Holly Higby Jansen, and I teach Lightroom Quick Start and iPhone photography for the BPSOP School of Photography. I also teach workshops for Jansen Photo Expeditions. Hi, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my new favorite app called ProCamera. And I have all of my apps organized into little files here. When I open that file, I can get to my ProCamera, of course. Just tap on the icon and it'll open up to this screen or something similar to this. And it will open up in the auto mode and it will focus on whatever you move. But let's go into the settings first before we play with this app at all. So if I go into the settings, which is in the lower right hand corner, those little horizontal lines that you see, and I'll tap on that. And then I'll tap on settings in the lower left corner. And it brings up a setting dialog. The first one we talk about, it's Lightbox, use Lightbox. So that's the Lightbox within ProCamera. I wouldn't recommend using that. You could store images in every single app that you have, that you use, and you won't be able to find your images on your photo roll. So I usually don't save it to Lightbox. You do have some options here to use stabilization, a self timer. File format, you can choose to use RAW or RAW plus JPEG. RAW is the the best quality uncompressed file format if you want to take your pictures and do some editing afterwards. Full screen trigger, the next one down, is if you would like to just tap on the screen in order to take the picture. Auto save will tell you, will either automatically save your images or it'll ask you to save them. I usually just set it on auto save. HDR settings, you have the ability to save HDR. It'll take multiple pictures in order to create one balanced exposure, and it'll ask you whether or not you want to save all of those images or just one. Low light plus, I don't really go into this one much. You enable this option in order to additionally save the reference photo along with your low light plus photo. Video I'm not going to talk about right now. The general options are probably the most important part about this, the focus and exposure. So this is where you want to enable the exposure circle. So this is one of the best benefits of this particular app. And I also prefer to do exposure priority. So when you'll see what I'm talking about as we go into the app, but let's just enable exposure priority. We're not going to do manual focus right now. And show lens position, we'll turn that one on. Geo tagging is up to you whether or not you would like your pictures to be geotagged as to where you actually took the pictures. I tend to use my iPhone and my digital SLR together at the same time, and I don't have a Wi-Fi enabled camera at this point, so the geotagging is great for me on my iPhone, so I use that as a geotag and then import that into Lightroom as far as my locations are concerned. So I think those are the best settings for you to use on this particular camera. And I think social tag, creative crowd. There's also some other user manuals if you'd like if you have questions about it, and of course you can ask me for further questions. So I think that's the settings, and we'll go right into the camera. So I'm going to give you some tools to use with a ProCamera app. When you first open up the camera app, if you tap on the screen, it'll give you this auto mode. It's got a square with a circle around it. If you tap that square with the circle around it again, it separates your focus and exposure points. So the yellow circle would be for exposure, and the blue square is for focus. So I think this is the main part about this app that I really like, is that of course you can separate your focus and exposure points, and then you can even lock down those focus and exposure points. So if I hold down the square, and you can lock it. If you hold down the square again, it'll unlock it. But that's a great feature on this particular app. Now there are some other settings in this app too that I want to show you. You have a rapid fire option, so you're getting to these settings if you hit on the bottom right. There's a little the little lines on the bottom right. Focus and exposure lock. You have the ability to grid. You can turn on a rule of thirds grid. Tilt meter would be to help you with positioning your image straight. ISO and shutter, so you have the ability to work on complete manual mode, but I don't see any reason to do that with this particular app. White balance I will stay away from. Histogram will give you the ability to see how the light is being read, see if your picture is overexposed or underexposed. So if you have more questions about specifically histogram, please ask me. Aspect ratio will give you the different sizes for your imagery. And then anti-shake, you turn that on if you don't want to take a picture unless it's perfectly still. Self-timer, you do have that ability to use the self-timer on this. So if you see the on-screen display modes, it shows light, standard, medium. Let's put it on the medium or standard mode so you can see what's available to you. So if you look at the bottom of the screen now, I have my picture roll is shown on the bottom left. So if you tap on that, it brings up your picture roll if you wanted to go into editing. I'm not going to show you editing on this particular app because I really prefer Snapseed for that. The little arrows going back and forth give you the option of changing from video, photo, HDR, or low light. There's a selfie mode and a QR scan as well. The little one with the circle around it is your timer. And then the little lines that we talked about before brings up your grids and your other settings within the app. One other thing I'd like to mention are the controls along the top of the app. And again, if you go back to your settings and you turn on your standard display mode, it'll bring up all of the items at the top of your screen. You can see in the top left you have the ability to have an automatic flash or turn the flash off altogether. I leave the flash off. I'm still not finding the flash to be useful on an iPhone, so I would just not use that at all. It does show you a semi-automatic shutter priority in this mode that I'm using right now to show you your then you have the ability to do exposure compensation. So if you click on that little plus minus at the top, you can actually change your exposure that way, which will globally change the exposure in your picture. It shows your ISO, semi-automatic ISO, and then you have a selfie mode in the far right. Below that is your histogram, which shows your light balance. So all the way to the left would be the darks in your picture, all the way to the right would be your lights in your picture. So those are the main features of this particular app, and I hope you enjoy using it. I'm finding this one to be a little more sophisticated than Camera Plus, but I would compare the two, see which ones you like the best, see which one is easier for you to use. So thank you, and look forward to seeing your pictures.